In one of those videos you just saw, an anti-Trump protester was burning the American flag. Sheriff David Clarke from Milwaukee County is with me now. Sheriff, welcome back. We are always happy to have you here. What is your reaction as somebody who is in charge of a law enforcement team when you see scenes like this?
Well, first of all, the word protest continues to slip into these conversations. You know as well as I do, this is organized violence. This is a system of intimidation and criminality. And I'm tired of seeing the footage of Trump supporters and other people who are engaging in constitutionally protected activity to participate in a rally in our democratic state to choose the next president of the United States. This is a civil rights violation. Why isn't Loretta Lynch dispatching civil rights lawyers to investigate these violations? Probably because she has them all looking at the police in the city of Chicago, Baltimore, and Milwaukee. But let me say this. As a law enforcement executive, your resources get taxed at these things. We know this. I wish the administrators, planners, not the cops. They don't plan these things. The administrators do. I wish it would be a little more assertive. But the cops can't be omnipresent. So when these Trump supporters come in, they have to be in a better position to be able to defend themselves. And what do I mean by that? They have to be better organized. They should utilize social media and say, hey, anybody going to the Trump rally tonight, a group of us are meeting over here, we'll go down there in a group. I would tell them, arrive in packs, travel in packs. Make sure you have a couple of enforcers in those packs in case something gets out of hand. And if you're traveling for women, I would say, make sure you have a couple of able-bodied males with you, preferably ones that have thrown a punch or two in their life to be able to defend you should something break out. Because I'll tell you something right now. You snatch my hat off my head, it's going to be a move you're going to regret for a long time. You snatch my sign out of my hand of my candidate, I'm coming back after it. And just because I get it back doesn't mean the fight is over. So this is the only thing that these idiots will understand. You know, they come down there waving the Mexican flag and then just trampling over people's rights. And then when there is some sort of counter action by a Trump supporter, then all of a sudden they want to play victim. And that stuff has to stop, too. Well, I'm not going to blame the police. You know, they don't divvy out the resources. This is the police planners, the administrators. But I'll tell you what, the chief of the San Jose Police Department, I don't know who he is, but if he's working for that goofy mayor that made that idiot statement that he made this morning, he's an enabler. If he's working for him, there's no doubt in my mind.
To refresh.
What is your message?
My message has been clear from day one 2 years ago. This anti-cop sentiment from this hateful ideology called Black Lives Matter has fueled this rage against the American police officer. I predicted this 2 years ago. So what I want to know,
okay, Sheriff.
Do I want to know?
With all due respect, do you know that this was because of that?
Yes, I do.
As a law enforcement officer?
I've been watching this for 2 years. I predicted this. This anti-police rhetoric sweeping the country has turned out some hateful things inside of people that are now playing themselves out on the American police officer. I want to know, with all of the black-on-black violence in the United States of America, by the way, when the tragedies happened in Louisiana and Minnesota, you know that 21 black people were murdered across the United States? Was there any reporting on that?
There was a black officer who was killed today. But
was there any reporting on that?
Sheriff, please, let's just keep the volume down here. So I understand, and listen, I'm looking
at 3 dead cops this week,
Sheriff,
and I'm looking at 5 last year. You trying to tell me to keep it down?
If you'll just please, we can keep it civil. So, because the message to people at home, I'm sure you want, is one of civility.
I wish, Don, I wish you had that message of civility.
I would like to have a conversation
toward this hateful ideology, these purveyors of hate.
You don't know what my message is.
That's
what I want to say to you is,
these people preach vile and virtue in the name of hate.
And we'll be right back.
We know that generally the American law enforcement officers are racist. Do we know this?
Go on.
I ask a question.
Do I know American general law enforcement are racist? I don't think anyone is accusing. If you're insinuating that people are accusing or saying that law enforcement across this country as a whole are racist, then your assumption is wrong.
First of all, this whole anti-police rhetoric is based on a lie. There is no data, and you know this. There is no data, there is no research that proves any of that nonsense. None.
You'd have to be more specific about what data and what nonsense you're talking about.
that law enforcement officers treat black males different than white males in policing in these urban centers.
There is data that supports
There is not data.
No. The president spoke about it. Cedric Alexander, who is a law
president has
enforcement
been
officer,
lying about it. He said it again the other day when he said black males are 2 times more likely to be shot by a law enforcement officer than white males. Don, that is a lie. Do you condemn the anti-police rhetoric coming from this hateful ideology?
As a journalist sitting here on television, I don't have to condemn anyone, anything. That is something that you should ask other people around the country.
I condemn
their jobs to condemn
just
that.
like I condemn the hateful ideology out of groups like the KKK. All right? I condemn it. There is no place in American discourse for that sort of vile, vitriolic hate coming out of this ideology. This has fueled and fanned the flames of this anger toward the American police officer. There's only one group in America, one time, that truly cares about the lives of black people in these urban ghettos. And it's the American police officer who goes down there on a daily basis, puts their life on the line to protect who? Black people. Well, you know, Barack Obama for 7+ years has played the race card that every time somebody criticized him, it was because he was black, and it scared off a lot of Republicans. So now they're going to switch and try to play the gender card. The problem is the American public is tired of this class warfare. The reason why they don't like Mrs. Bill Clinton is not because she's a woman. It's because she's dishonest and because she is hiding something. She's hiding the truth. She tries to play herself off as a victim, like she's Little Red Riding Hood, but she's more like the big bad wolf. As soon as you turn your back on you, she'll bite you. Now, look, this is politics. It's a contact sport. It's not for the faint of heart. My response to what President Obama said is if she can't stand the heat, she should get out of the kitchen.
Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke, thanks for coming on. Sheriff Clarke, this is horrific, what happened, obviously. But do you think it is fair to link this murder to the Black Lives Matter movement when we still don't know the suspect's motive?
I think it's very fair in light of the anti-cop rhetoric that is sweeping the United States of America, fueled by this group. Some of the vulgar, vile, vicious rhetoric that's coming out, talking about killing cops, and that's just some of the nice stuff, some of the stuff I can't even say here on TV. But there is no doubt in my mind that the 2 New York officers, Ramos and Lou, who were gunned down by an individual who made Facebook postings about wanting to kill pigs, and he was going to go out and hunt officers down. There have been officers across the United States who've had their cruisers shot at and struck while they patrolled. St. Louis, the same thing. Yes, this is part of a pattern now, and you'd have to stick your head in the sand to think that this thing here wasn't fueled by this vile, vulgar, slimy movement.
Was the reaction to the Eric Garner case, who was choked to death using a procedure that had been banned by the NYPD for more than 20 years, wasn't resisting arrest, said, "I can't breathe" 11 times on 11 different occasions. There was no response by all of the police officers who were there. Was that a false narrative that people in the city of New York and the country are reacting to, sir?
Mr. Chair, Congressman, first of all, he wasn't choked to death, not from the report that I had seen. Out of the grand jury testimony and even from the medical examiner's report, he wasn't choked to death.
The medical examiner ruled the death a homicide by asphyxiation. In the ghetto, that's called being choked to death, sir.
Well, we're going to have this discussion later on then about the facts, because we could be here for a while. My understanding is he died of a heart attack, okay? So, but anyway, you said that he wasn't resisting arrest. He was resisting arrest. He was told that he was under arrest and put his hands behind his back, and he wouldn't do so. And that's why I put in my remarks here the reference from Thomas Sowell about when law enforcement officers tell someone they're under arrest and they can't use force to execute that arrest. We don't have the rule of law when it's merely a suggestion for them that they're going to jail or to put their hands behind their back. We are a sovereign nation. If you're going to have a sovereign, if you're going to be a sovereign nation, you have to have borders, and you have to protect those borders. Mark Zuckerberg has no idea who's coming into this country and what it takes to vet those individuals. I, as a law enforcement officer, I'm in my 39th year. We do a lot of vetting of people. I know how it's done, but you have to have databases with which to compare. So you take a name, someone coming in as a refugee, and we're not talking about the kids. I'm tired of all this, throwing the crocodile tears about the kids, the poor kids coming in. We're not talking about that. We're talking about able-bodied grown men fighting age that should be back in Syria and back in the Middle East, fighting for their country, coming over to the United States to spread jihad. So that's who we're talking about. But if you don't have a database, someone gives you a name, and you don't have a database in Syria because they don't have the record systems and the databases like we have with people, you have nothing to compare it to. So they give you a name and you look, and there's nothing there. That doesn't mean that they're safe to come in.
Well, it's why I said, Sean, that fake news has a birthplace and a birthday. August 9th, 2014, when this widely held false belief of hands up, don't shoot was propagated by the media. They went down there and fit their narrative. Think about what happened off that fake news, Sean. It changed America. This anti-police sentiment rose out of this. This, what I call the bastard child of hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matter, grew out of this thing. It swept the country. There are people to this day, Sean, who believe that Mike Brown had his hands up and was walking away with his back turned to Darren Wilson when Darren Wilson shot and killed him. In fact, we all know that's a lie. And only one Washington Post writer had the character, had the integrity to admit that it was a lie. I think it was Jonathan Capehart is his name, who wrote an op-ed and said, yeah, we got hoodwinked on that thing. It was embarrassing for this industry, and he had the courage to do it. But to this day, no other media outlet has done it.
True. They did. No, let me finish. They did say that was not true. And for you to say, for Clarke to claim that that was the beginning of fake news is the most ridiculous thing.
Sheriff Clarke. Sheriff, you want to respond?
Well, it's fine. It might be ridiculous, but I'll tell you what, we have dead cops because of that hands up, don't shoot lie. We had 2 in New York. We also had 5 in Dallas. And some in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, people who were trying to avenge for the life of Mike Brown, who was a thug. Here's another thing they left out of that story.
Been 11
Mike Brown had just strong-armed a convenience store clerk who was half his size. That is a felony in every state in America. And he also tried to disarm a law enforcement officer. That's how serious this was. It might sound dumb to you, but there are dead cops because of that fake news story out of Ferguson, Missouri. And Eric, I resent that coming from you.
The police use of force serves as an igniter, there's no doubt, but to an already volatile situation, a volatile mix of urban pathologies, failed urban policy that exacerbates inescapable poverty, failing public schools, inadequate parenting, father-absent homes. We all know when fathers are not around to shape the behavior of young boys, they oftentimes grow up to be unmanageable misfits that the police have to deal with in an aggressive fashion. Pathologies like lifestyle choices, questionable lifestyle choices, gang involvement, drug and alcohol abuse, as well as massive unemployment. Those are the ingredients. Those are the things that cause resentment, anger, and frustration to boil beneath the surface, and then all of a sudden a police situation comes along, and that's why I said it's an igniter, but it's an igniter to an already festering situation. So, this whole last couple of years coming out of Ferguson, there's been a lot of focus on police and police use of force, and that's fine by me. President Obama uses jumping to conclusions as some sort of mental calisthenics. Like I said, it's what he does best. Some of these statistics that he cited, those have been debunked, all right? Cops do not shoot black males at 2 times the rate of whites. And as for arrest rates, when you include the participation in crime and in violence that black males are attributed to, that equals out why their numbers are higher in terms of arrest and imprisonment. So he's using faulty data. Again, what we want from the president, Sean, is we want him to calm the waters, but he's picked a side. He's picked the side of the criminal. He's picked the side of race hustlers and race demagogues. And this has been, in my 38 years in law enforcement, the most anti-police president I have ever seen.
Wow.
I heard the President of the United States in an interview say that police officers have a fear of people who don't look like them. That is as disgusting a statement that I have ever heard anybody make. We know what our law enforcement officers mean to our communities. We're not perfect, but we are our community's finest. And only now that 2 officers are dead in New York, 2 more shot last night in an unrelated type of situation, but it speaks to the danger of law enforcement in these American ghettos. He does this all the time. He goes and he says, race relations have improved. And I was saying to myself, here it comes, but, and sure as heck, about 2 sentences in, he goes to but, and he pivots and starts to lecture us about how we're all racist, we're all discriminatory, and then he talks about our police departments are, on and on and on and on. I'll tell you right now, Sean, if he's our best hope in improving relations between law enforcement agencies and the communities we're served, well, then we're finished. The bloodbath continues for the American law enforcement officer in the name of Black Lives Matter. And I listened to the president this afternoon, and he does, he does the, what's required, right? Our condolences.
Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family.
Here's the thing he will not do. And this would go a long way, not right away. I predicted this several years ago. If we kept up with this anti-police sentiment, it was going to turn into this. He will not condemn the anti-police sentiment. He condemned the violence. He has to condemn the violence. He will not condemn the anti-police sentiment. But when a terror attack happens, he gets out there and warns and condemns against Muslim backlash for the terror attacks. He will not do that for the American.
Phony. That's what he is. Al Sharpton's a cartoon. I don't know why the media continues to put a camera and a microphone in front of his face as if he's some
because the White House is using him as their point man on race issues.
I get that, and I'm not going to engage in hyperbole, but Al Sharpton has created a pathway that has led to the increase in police hatred all across America. He doesn't believe a word of what he said today, neither does anybody else. He does propagate violence, he propagates hate, he's self-serving, and it's about time that America start to turn away from Al Sharpton along with some of these other cop haters that we've heard so much from over the last couple of months. You're known by the company you keep, and so when I see him shoulder to shoulder with people like Mayor de Blasio, when I see him with Eric Holder, and I see him in the company of the President of the United States, that tells me a lot, because I would question the judgment of anybody in the United States of America that would hold counsel or take advice from Al Sharpton.
And yet, lawyer and offer their side of the story.
They don't need Al Sharpton on their side. What I would, my advice to the Garner family, to the Brown family, and anybody else, if you see Al Sharpton coming in your direction, you hear he's coming to your town, run as fast and as far as you can from that individual, because he's only here to squeeze as much juice out of you as he can for his own self-serving purposes, and then he leaves. He hasn't been anywhere around Ferguson, Missouri. They're trying to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives there and help rebuild, and he's not going to be around the Eric Garner family long either. He's going to be on to the next self-serving mission that Al Sharpton is known for. I find it to be sick. I find it to be despicable, and I'm going to continue to really raise Cain on the mainstream media, not Fox News Channel, but the mainstream media, to continue to look to him as a go-to guy on the feelings and the thoughts of Black America.
Well, we have a report directly on point.
Former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke was in the hallway here. He was here yesterday, I think, doing MSNBC. I said, well, go holler at him, see if he'll drop in on the show. He was on the show previously via Skype. He's here. Sheriff Clarke, how you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, man.
First and foremost, we see what's happening in Las Vegas there. A lot of discussion about gun control. Should there be action taken by Congress to move on guns? Police departments across the country are saying it makes no sense to literally have individuals with this kind of firepower who can wreak havoc on this country.
Sure. First of all, this kind of firepower is already banned in the United States for private citizens. And as human nature goes, someone is always going to find a way. You can make all the laws you want. We have gun control in this country. To pile more gun control on top of that punishes law-abiding citizens. Let me give you an example. There are estimated over 200 million gun owners in the United States of America. Much less than 1% would ever take that instrument and use it in that fashion to slaughter people.
But we have a lot of mass shootings in this country compared to other countries that are similar to us. And when you have, I've talked to a number of folks in law enforcement who say more can be done. They said there can be more advanced background checks. There can be more changes when it comes to gun shows. I mean, these are law enforcement officials who are saying to politicians, y'all have got to do more policy-wise. These are your fellow law enforcement folks.
Well, look, we can have differences of opinion within law enforcement. When I look at some of the stuff that causes the violence in our urban centers, little of it has anything to do with background checks, amounts of ammunition, those sorts of things. So we have to work on the right thing. Every time one of these incidents happen, these unfortunate incidents, I think it's because we're trying to achieve, when I say we, someone's trying to achieve a political end. Right away they go to the NRA, right away they go to more gun control. When, let's look at this situation in Vegas. Right now this investigation's ongoing. There's a long way to go with this. The things that you mentioned, I want to know what role that played in this situation. Like in San Bernardino, like in Orlando, Omar Mateen with the nightclub incident, and any of the other mass shootings. What did it have to do with background checks? What did the Sikh temple shooting in my county, Milwaukee, Wisconsin? All those people passed a background check. So when we say we need more background checks, we already have that stuff. So what I don't want to end up with is the law of unintended consequences. And what we end up doing is we end up making it harder. We punish people who weren't involved in this thing. In other words, if I go to buy a firearm, and I've done this as a private citizen, it's a very steep hurdle to get to. It's not like you can drop into a 7-Eleven and just buy a firearm.
One second, I got to go to a break, but even the majority of NRA members support advanced background checks as well. So hold tight 1 second. Welcome back, News One Now on TV One. We're joined by former Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. First and foremost, you're now with a PAC that is advancing the Trump agenda. Yesterday, he was in Puerto Rico, and he talked about the Puerto Rican debt has gotten lots of criticism because of that, and also going after the Puerto Rican, the San Juan mayor as well. Could he have handled Puerto Rico a heck of a lot better when you have a 3-star general who said on the ground, we don't have enough resources down here to get what needs to be done? Many felt he did not show proper compassion for the folks that are bringing up their debt.
Well, you know, first of all, in political back and forth, there's always these things that are lobbed, you know. Could he have done it better? I'm not going to get into that, okay? He gets blamed for a lot of things no matter what. He cannot, in some circles, he can do nothing right.
Sound like Obama. 8 years with a lot of Republicans who said he couldn't do anything right.
All right, but the Puerto Rican situation, first of all, you know, you had the hurricane come through there and nearly wipe out the island. They're still trying to get the power back on. There's work that needs to be done, and it's going to take some time. And then always when this stuff is thrown into the political realm, these things come up, the Puerto Rican debt, which is an issue.
But at that time, though, to me, it doesn't matter what your debt is. At the end of the day, when you got people who, Congressman Gutierrez was on here, he said they're literally burying folks in their backyard. I don't think anybody right now is talking about debt. I mean, Florida has debt. No one, and I'm from Texas. No one was talking about the debt of Florida and Texas when the hurricanes there.
I don't think they have the debt in Florida like they have in Puerto Rico. But here's the thing. Somehow we got to restore power in Puerto Rico. And those people who are responsible for that need to get that done regardless of all the political back and forth. The mayor of in that area probably could have and should have done some things differently too. So you can say that all around. But the main thing for me is
she was waiting in the water, going door to door, trying to say who anybody's alive. So she was doing some work.
She spent more time before the camera instead of rolling up her sleeves and getting down there and getting some of it. And that's the political environment this has been thrown into now.
Yeah, but she was wading through the water.
Mr. Clarke, I'm glad you're here, man. Listen, if Paddock had yelled Allahu Akbar or said perhaps Black Lives Matter, I think that you, if based on your comments before on both those organizations and others, probably would have said that this was an act of terrorism. So I want to ask you very directly, since the origin of this act yesterday, in Vegas, was an act of white America, is this an act of domestic terrorism?
The investigation is not done.
No, because if it was Black Lives Matter or Allahu Akbar, you would say terrorism, would you not?
First of all,
would you not, based on what you said before, brother?
You presented me with a hypothetical.
No, not really.
You said if, that's a hypothetical.
Yeah, that's
if
true.
He had done this, but he did not do that.
Well, how about this here? Should we call Steve Paddock a domestic terrorist?
Yes, that's simple.
That's for the authorities in Vegas and the FBI to determine and put a label on what this incident
But Black Lives Matter.
No, I'm just curious. Would you call Paddock a domestic terrorist?
I don't have all the facts of the investigation.
What about Black Lives Matter?
I usually always preface when people ask me about these incidents. I usually start off by saying, first of all, I do not have all the facts. I have not been privy to any of the investigation. So anything that anybody asks me about is supposition. All right, but we could sit up if he had said Allahu Akbar, but he didn't. So to ask me that, if he had said Black Lives Matter or whatever, but he didn't. So you want to deal with what happened, not what might have happened.
Spencer.
So this debt in Puerto Rico, I just don't understand how it's related to helping them. I mean, I don't think that they're less worthy of help because they have some debt, right?
Sure. Okay, fine. But the fact is that once these things enter a political realm, it goes to crap. It really does. And the charges start being made back and forth. Okay, you want to get hung up on, I don't mean you personally, people want to get hung up on the issue of him bringing up the debt. Okay, fine. But that's not going to help anything from this point moving forward. Power has to be restored, and this country has to be allowed to get back up on its feet.
Literally, I got 40 seconds
in regards to
for
Vegas,
question and answer.
In regards to Vegas, I agree with the sheriff. The thing about it is, I went to school in Tennessee.
You agree that semi-automatic weapons are fine?
What I'm about to say is...
Let's go, I got 30 seconds.
What I'm about to say is the facts around this case have not been stated. We're all speculating right now as to what took place out there. And until we get the facts... Until we get the facts... Until we get the facts...
You said that, right? So
we can't call it that,
right? But just like real quick, when the president before what happened in London, he immediately called an act of terrorism, and we didn't have all the facts. So a lot of times in America, we do weigh in before we have a full investigation. Got 15 seconds.
Part of the human condition. All right, we jump to conclusions, and I usually caution people about that as well early on, because I've been involved where I was at the tip of the spear on these types of investigations.
Got it.
It's human nature. We're going to do these things, but at some point, cooler heads have to prevail, and that's the role that I have to play when I was a law enforcement.
I got to go to break.